I want to send a message that we are going to catch you, that we are going to change the laws, that if you're 14, 15, 16, 17, we're going to bring you into the justice system. No more of this D.C., council, if they're under 16 or if they're under 19 or if they're under 25, we'll give them probation. No more. I'm done with that.
According to U.S. Attorney for D.C. Jeanine Pirro, federal operations in Washington, D.C. are escalating tonight. In an interview with Fox this morning, Pirro said law enforcement will shift to a 24/7 operating status, expanding beyond the previous evening-only focus. She also says a significantly larger National Guard presence is expected throughout the city, with additional deployment numbers to be confirmed. Happening right now, we do have a special report looking at the impacts of President Donald Trump's federal takeover of the Metropolitan Police Department and deployment of the National Guard. Federal officials tout early results, saying 43 arrests have been made and 7 illegal firearms have been recovered in just the first 48 hours. Thank you for joining us. I'm Simone D'Alba. Just half an hour ago, President Trump spoke about his plans for the district. His remarks came as he announced the Kennedy Center honorees.
I'm determined to make Washington, D.C. safe, clean, and beautiful again. It's going to take place very rapidly. Be prepared. And a big part of that's going to include the Kennedy Center. So we're going to make Washington beautiful. We're going to redo roads. We're going to redo the medians, the pavers, and the medians all throughout the city. We're going to take all the graffiti off. We're going to have to remove the tents and the people that are living in our parks. We're going to be redoing the parks, the grasses and all. We're going to be going to Congress for a relatively small amount of money, and Lindsay and the Republicans are going to be approving it.
Mayor Muriel Bowser is also responding to the current climate in D.C. She spoke in a community conversation last night where she pushed back against recent comments made by the Trump administration in regard to everyday life in the nation's capital.
We don't live in a dirty city. We are not 700,000 scumbags and punks. We don't have neighborhoods that should be bulldozed.
Last night, the National Guard went down to the National Mall for patrol. They're joining the 850 officers and federal agents already patrolling the streets. This is just a small glimpse of the presence that we have been seeing around the city so far. Jess Arnold is at the National Mall with more on the new video and Mayor Bowser's response.
We're keeping our eye out for the D.C. National Guard as well as other federal law enforcement officers here on the National Mall and throughout D.C. because we know hundreds of these officers will be patrolling the streets this week. Now, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser coming out now with a stronger tone regarding President Trump's characterization of D.C. as dirty and dangerous. New video from overnight shows DEA agents patrolling the streets of Georgetown.
One thing that has everybody pretty mad, especially me, is the characterization of our city and our residents.
D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser gets candid with neighbors in a virtual town hall Tuesday.
I'm also really ticked off about the intrusion on the district's autonomy and the characterization of the good work that we do in this city to make it beautiful, to have excellent services, to attract millions of tourists, to have a growing school system.
As the U.S. Army activates the D.C. National Guard.
My expectation, though it can change, is that they will deploy the Guard on federal properties. That includes parks, monuments, federal buildings.
One Reddit user in Southeast D.C. capturing U.S. Park Police monitoring and talking with neighbors last night.
Did y'all get a call or something right here?
No, so we're doing checks, keeping everybody safe down here.
Also penalized in this order, homelessness. The White House press secretary saying yesterday that anyone who doesn't move to a shelter or get help could be fined or put in jail.
We are focused on really getting people to come into shelter, as we always are, but with some intensity, because we can't say for certain what the federal approach is. We have 700,000 proud Americans who call DC home. And while we're not without our challenges, we take care of our own people.
Mayor Bowser ended with 2 calls to action. 1, urging parents to make sure you know where your kids are. And 2, asking people who live in D.C. to share online, post on social media what you love about it. From the National Mall, Jess Arnold, WUSA 9.
Jess, thank you. Right now, we're learning more about a confrontation in Northwest D.C. that's gone viral. Have you seen this video? Officials say a man aggressively approached a federal officer, yelling, cursing, and berating him before allegedly throwing a sandwich and hitting the officer in the chest. The man was arrested on the scene and will be charged with assault on a police officer. We have seen so many of you posting photos and videos pushing back against President Trump's description of D.C. And we want to know, what do you love about the city? What do you love about D.C.? Text the word love to 202-895-5599, and we'll be sharing some of your comments on the air. Well, National Guard troops are on the streets of Washington, D.C. to help carry out President Trump's unprecedented plan to take over policing in the Capitol. Scott McFarland asked some D.C. residents how they feel about that.
One day after President Trump announced his plan, National Guard troops were deployed to D.C. streets Tuesday night, joining nearly 900 federal agents and officers that have taken post around Washington, alongside local police who are now under the authority of the Trump administration. In D.C.'s Anacostia neighborhood, Ron Moten says crime has long plagued his community, but he and others are skeptical this is a good idea.
They're tired of violence. I get it. But my only caution is, one thing can lead to the next thing. You can take over our police department today, and we wake up and you take over our city.
They may not give it back.
They may not give it back.
Top Department of Justice officials, including the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, met with D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser yesterday, while the White House defended the 30-day takeover.
We are removing as many criminals from the streets, and we are cleaning up D.C. as best as we can, and working with the Metropolitan Police Department to do that.
Darrell Gaston has seen the violence up close.
Those are bullet holes up there?
Yeah, bullet holes. This whole window had to be replaced right here.
A recent car chase and shooting damaged the outside of Gaston's restaurant. He welcomes an increased law enforcement presence, but says the community wants a longer-term plan to curb crime.
We can always use more police, right? But I think having police officers that are from the community, that are trained locally, is much different than having a federal police that's not trained in community policing.
D.C.'s mayor cites data which shows violent crime is at its lowest level in 30 years and had this warning about Trump's actions.
I think that is what he is trying to make it normal, where citizens say the federal government should overtake local policing. We can't be desensitized to it because it's not normal.
As for how long this federal takeover will last, the White House says it will reevaluate and make further decisions after this current 30-day window is up. Scott McFarland, CBS News, Washington.
Mayor Bowser invited the community to a virtual conversation to share what she knows and to hear directly from residents last night. Here's a snippet from that conversation as they focus on the mental health impact of this takeover.
Thank you, everybody, for your time this evening. I have two questions. One, as a DC resident myself, a lot of us are experiencing a lot of stress, trauma, and burnout from everything that's happening. So is there anything that the city is doing to increase access to mental health support for both residents, our violence interrupters, and even our first responders? And then my second is, I know a lot of us are very concerned about safety. Over the weekend, I was in a neighborhood, and it almost felt like they were doing jump outs and stop and frisks. So when it comes to fairness in policing, what are we doing to make sure communities, how do I want to word this? How is the city working to protect communities while ensuring that trust and accountability also remain the center? Like, will we have a number where we can call if we see something and it's shady? I've had several people that have been kind of unfortunately locked up because they didn't know where they could smoke or engage in something. Like, there just seems to be a lot of those wires. So I guess those are my questions. Like, where will we go to get the resources that are always discussed? Thank you again.
So I think as we develop our kind of know your rights, let us find like a clearinghouse for information and also to report any concerns. Obviously, MPD concerns can be reported to the police complaints line and to any of us and the chief of police. And I'm going to ask the chief of police to maybe, or Lindsay, can you help us think through this? If there is a email that we can send specific information to, so that we can be responsive. And in the information piece that we'll put out, Poet, we will make sure we highlight where people can have access to services.
Y'all should be in that room over there.
Including the
That
VAT
room.
services that we medical services that we offer. All of our employees have access to an employee assistance program as well.
Mayor Bowser concluded this conversation with a call to action to D.C. residents to make sure the world sees the real Washington and not just the one being portrayed by the president. I also had the chance to speak with D.C. Councilmember Brooke Pinto about these developments. She represents Ward 2 of the district and is also the chairperson of the Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety. You know, I wanted to ask you, we're over 24 hours in here after the announcement of President Trump federalizing the police force. Do you believe that D.C. needs help addressing crime?
Well, let me be very clear with the language that we're using here. Our police department is still run by Chief Smith, who reports to the mayor. It is still our local police department who follows DC laws, who follows MPD policy, who follows the Constitution. That has not changed. And that's really important for people to understand, because the president used a lot of rhetoric yesterday that does not match the language of the executive order itself. Now, as the chair of the Council's Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety, I am and have been laser focused on ways that we can drive down crime and violence. It's why in 2023, when we were seeing a crime surge, I put together the largest public safety legislative package in our history, Secure DC, which was over 100 different interventions, and worked alongside the mayor, all my council colleagues, the attorney general, and our U.S. attorney and courts, and communities across the district to make sure that we were driving down crime. And I'm so proud that since we've done so, we have cut violent crime in half, leading to a 30-year low.
Councilmember, I wanted to interrupt you real quickly. So you touched on this, but I wanted to back you up. Police stats, right, are showing that crime is down, as you've touched on. Violent crime specifically down 26% according to MPD. But look, for some residents, it still feels too high. The perception is that, you know, is exactly that. Crime is too high. How do you reconcile with those two realities?
Well, it is still too high. And it is paramount that every person in DC, whether you live here or whether you're working here or visiting here, is safe in every single one of our neighborhoods. And I will not be satisfied with where we are with public safety until that's a reality for every single resident. And so my focus on this issue is not going to let up. I just believe that the best way to do so is through our locally elected council to pass laws that support an ecosystem of prevention and accountability, to make sure that we're collaborating with our federal partners to fill judicial vacancies, for them to prosecute cases through the U.S. Attorney's Office, to get illegal guns off our street, to fill the $1 billion hole that they've left in our budget, disallowing us from properly paying our police and firefighters. So there is a lot more work to be done, and I'm focused on doing that work with my colleagues every single day.
What's your understanding about what the National Guard will be able to do? Will they be allowed to arrest people in D.C.?
So the president has called for the National Guard, which, because we're not a state in DC, the DC National Guard falls under the purview of the president. So that is something he technically can do. And they are now working in coordination with MPD on trying to bolster MPD's efforts to support public safety. The National Guard will not have the ability to make arrests. It's a bit of an unusual choice because National Guardsmen are usually doing things like disaster relief, passing out blankets, or being dispatched to war zones. And so them kind of being here in our streets, we thank every service member for their service and their support, but we still need to make sure that our MPD is managing our crime fighting efforts.
All right, Councilmember, before we go, last question for you. We've heard DC's Attorney General Jeanine Pirro arguing that DC's laws are too weak, especially when it comes to juvenile crime and holding them accountable. What's your response to that?
Well, part of what I have been doing over the last several years is looking at our entire ecosystem for juveniles and adults and trying to fill those gaps where I did think that we needed to do more for prevention, or I did think we needed to do more on accountability. That's why I changed the law to allow judges to hold juvenile offenders pre-trial if they've committed violent offenses. It's why I moved just last month emergency legislation to empower the chief to have earlier curfews in certain zones of the city where we are seeing an uptick in juvenile crime. But the vast majority of young people in our city are doing amazing things that need to continue to be supported. And when it comes to our legal landscape, I am always open-minded to looking at gaps and trying to fill them.
All right, Ward 2 Councilmember Brooke Pinto, certainly appreciate your time today. Thank you. Our neighbors and people visiting D.C. have all found themselves sharing our streets with armored military vehicles and with troops from the National Guard, all courtesy, of course, of President Trump and his declaration of a crime emergency. Yesterday, our Lorenzo Hall and Leslie Foster spoke with the chairman of the D.C. Council, Phil Mendelson. He called the president's actions a manufactured crisis that could do a lot of harm.
I guess give us your initial reaction to the president's announcement yesterday. Were you surprised?
A little surprised. What was more disturbing to me was the rhetoric at the press conference, because it was so false with regard to what the president was saying about crime in the city. I mean, he said, and I quote, that crime has risen precipitously. Well, it hasn't. Crime is down. It's down this year compared to last year. Last year it was down compared to the year before. Looking at crime over the last 10 years, it's down 43%. Violent crime in the city right now is the lowest it's been since the 1990s. Crime is not on the rise, and certainly not on the precipitous rise. So it's like a manufactured crisis. And what's more disturbing or troubling to me is that it creates a false narrative, a negative image of the city. That's going to deter tourism. It's unnerving to the business community. It's just harmful to paint the city as lawless with random gangs roving the streets. It's just very, very damaging.
Yeah, Chairman, so you're being a leader here, you're watching that, you know the truth. You live here. What are you thinking in that moment as you listen to the president there go on and on for more than an hour about his version of the district?
Well, how do we counter the narrative? So I can be here being interviewed, but this is not a national program. Sorry, it should be, but it's not. He has a national platform. But it has been encouraging that as this has been reported, that what I've seen with media outlets, national outlets, is they've talked about how crime is actually down in the city, which it is. U.S. News and World Report recently did an analysis of homicides and property crime of cities across the country, and D.C. didn't even make the top 25 or bottom 25, however you want to describe it. We are just not a dangerous place to be in. Do we have crime? Yes. Should we reduce crime further? Absolutely, we should. But this is not a lawless place. I live here, I feel safe. I see tourists, they seem happy. That's the true picture of the city.
There is, though, I have to say, Leader, that there is the perception, I think, among some residents in our community that crime is too high. Stats may not bear that out. And so how do you deal with the reality of the crime is coming down, but wherever you live in your neighborhood, you may not be feeling as safe as you want to be, and you see this as an opportunity to remedy that?
Well, that's very true what you're saying. Last year, there were something like 3,400 violent crimes, 43% fewer than 10 years ago. 3,400 crimes is still a lot of crimes. It's a lot of victims. It's a lot of bad stories. It's important that we get those rates down further. Those rates could be down further and should be. And I'll just say that to the extent that the federal government wants to help and provide additional resources, I think that's a good thing. Public safety in the district has always been a partnership between the district and the federal government, because that's just the nature of it. The U.S. Attorney prosecutes. We need the U.S. Attorney to prosecute more. Our prison system is actually the federal prison system. The Court Supervision Agency, which is after folks come out of prison, where there's a real issue with recidivism, that's federal. So there's been a partnership. More federal resources is a good thing. But this takeover, that's concerning. The negative narrative is very problematic.
We want to get your response because during that more than hour-long press conference there the president held, they didn't call out the mayor when talking about D.C. leadership, but particularly they were specific when talking about the D.C. Council and also the Attorney General.
Yeah, there does seem to be a little bit of a shift there. The mayor has tried to develop a relationship with the president. That may be part of what's going on there. I think that the council, legislatures are always an easy foil. And we pass laws or we don't pass laws, and there's always some controversy. I mean, the reality is that the council does not do crime fighting. And we've actually passed a number of criminal laws that everybody has praised as being strengthening tools for prosecutors. But still, it's easy to say that the council is somehow at fault. And the reality is that public safety first is arrests. The council doesn't arrest anybody. And second, it's prosecutions, and the council doesn't prosecute anybody.
Last question for you. I know that this notion that there would be hundreds of National Guardsmen out on the streets flooding neighborhoods is of deep concern to a lot of folks.
Yeah.
What are the limits here? What should residents know about what these National Guardsmen and women can do, what they cannot do, and what should people know just in general about how this is going to impact their daily lives?
Well, my impression, and I was briefed yesterday by the chief, is that the National Guard will be providing a lot of logistical support and back office support to law enforcement.
Similar to what happened in the 90s when they were deployed?
No, not. I don't think there'll be as much of a presence.
Okay.
That's not to say there won't be any.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can be providing some help. I think it's a horrible look for the city, and I wonder if it isn't also that the president got knocked back a bit when he tried to call out the National Guard in California. It's easier for him to do it here. Actually, he's the only one who can call out the National Guard here. So I think this is a playbook that he's been wanting for a while.
This is making a broader case, we hear, about this drumbeat for D.C. statehood.
Yeah. Yes. Now, I mean, I will say that I think the D.C. statehood is important, but in my view, that's not the lead issue here. The lead issue here is that crime is not what the president said it is. The city is much safer and is actually quite beautiful, and that we welcome federal support, and the reality is that his executive order is not actually taking over the police department, but we'll see how it plays out.
So it sounded like, based on what we heard from the mayor and the chief earlier today, they welcome this additional support for the next 30 days or so, saying it could be, So do you think that's a good thing? Do you agree with the mayor there?
Well, I agree with her. We'll see if that's the limit. So I will tell you that listening to the press conference yesterday, I heard one thing: the city's lawless, rampant gangs. When I read the executive order, it was, I am calling on the mayor to provide the services of the Metropolitan Police Department to the federal government.
So what's written and what's said are not always in alignment, which we have heard and seen through this tenure here. Well, Chairman, we thank you so much for coming back.
Sure.
You are always welcome here. We'd love to talk to you about the commanders at some point soon, too.
Plenty to talk about this city.
So, you know, we'll carve out some more time another day.
Okay.
Thank you for stopping by.
Happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us at 12:30. Our next live newscast is at 4 p.m. Hope you have a great day. We'll see you then.